hear from you, because you represent the youth. We need to know what our future is going to be from a person as young as you. Do we really have some hope out there? And you have been working so proactively towards everything. These are challenging times, definitely. And honestly, as a mass from as a general person from the community, we do not know how to react to all that is happening around us. This is the third national lockdown, and this wasn't anticipated. The way we were being communicated, the way it turned out that we were being allowed a small space to be happy during the festive season. And immediately after Christmas, everything went, it was topsy-turvy. Everything was different. And then the schools reopened, and the very next day, children are into school for a day, and the next day they are told, do not come any further. So obviously, it is understandable that the people of the country, as well as the people of Nottingham, are not sure how to react. Honestly speaking, I was just going through a few of the newspapers and other media reactions, and also trying to grab at people's reaction. There has been, how do I explain that? I wouldn't say just a mixed reaction. It has been a tide of reaction coming in from people. They were like, do these people do not understand? I mean, how can it be that one day they say it is safe to go to school, and the very next day they say you are not supposed to come? How is it possible that you ask people, you tell people it is okay to meet, three households can meet, and just after that, 2-3 days after that, you say that we are going into a lockdown or you shouldn't meet. So you have been looking at it very closely. What do you understand of it? Can you really tell people to be calm? Is it not right for people to be extremely anxious the way they are right now?
I think you've summed up, Annu, the strength of feeling around this, and the fact that the government has completely mismanaged this crisis all the way along. We've seen the government refusing to lock down before it was too late. They pursued a disastrous herd immunity strategy. They reopened the economy too quickly over the summer, encouraged people to return to work before it was safe. They spent 500 million on the Eat Out to Help Out scheme that we said would spread the virus, and then it did. They failed to implement a test and trace program despite spending billions on it. We had PPE shortages. They failed to ensure safety in care homes. And then, as you say, all the way through, their response to this pandemic has been defined by indecision and inconsistency when they've been announcing lockdown measures and then reneging and then saying that we'll do something else. Like, as you mentioned, the schools fiasco. SAGE warned, the government's own scientific advice committee warned about this in December, and it took 2 weeks for Boris Johnson to respond. On one day, he said that schools were safe. The next day, he said that schools were vectors of transmission. That didn't happen overnight in 24 hours.
Exactly.
So I think it's absolutely justifiable and legitimate that people are angry. I'm angry.
Yes.
I understand your pain, and I've been campaigning for that financial support that our communities need. And I would just like this opportunity to say to people that I genuinely believe that there is hope, that we have the vaccine. These are the final months of this nightmare. And I'd like to say that the vaccine programme is underway. It's completely safe. And it's very important that everyone gets vaccinated. This is what I'm saying to my mum and my family. And it's what I say to you. Thank you for following the rules. Thank you for your huge sacrifices. And by following the rules, as the vast majority of the public has, you're not only protecting yourself and your loved ones, but you're protecting everyone in our wider community. You're protecting our NHS, because no one of us is safe during COVID until all of us are safe. And if all of us take this vaccine when it's offered to us, of course, starting with the most vulnerable, over 80s, key workers, then that will be the path to us exiting this and returning to some sense of new normality.
Yes, definitely. And I hope, and I shouldn't say I hope, I believe that Nottingham is going to respond very positively towards it. In fact, as I was telling, that the people's reaction, although it has been a tide of emotions, but I have heard people saying that had we been a little more dutiful towards what was said, if we did not party, then it could have been stopped. I mean, people are even ready to take a bit of a blame on themselves. They are good people that live around here who are saying that something more could be done from us, from the civilians, to stop the spread of it. While others, few others, are enraged. But obviously, if this kind of a mixed reaction comes from a community, it is understandable that we will be able to curb the situation and it will not go out of hand. Just in October, Nottingham was on top of the list for the number of corona cases. And the way people behaved, it all came down. We are now towards we are quite below in the list. That shows that people are very responsible here. Although something had happened, more students coming from the outside had created all of that. But still, it looks like Nottingham is one of the best places to live at the moment in the country, where people are behaving so sensibly. So yes, another thing that I would like to take up.
It's people's sacrifices and observing lockdowns that has resulted in a decline in infection rates, well, an improvement in infection rates in Nottingham. It's still very high, of course, and people need to keep following those rules, to stay at home, to avoid unnecessary travel, to wash your hands, to maintain social distancing when you do need to go outside, remember to wear your mask. But it's, as you say, it's because people have made those sacrifices that we're not in an even worse position. It's because of those sacrifices that we've made any progress over the past 10 months. And I think it's important to say that we mustn't turn on each other. The vast majority of people, including students and young people, have followed the rules. And we need to pin any blame for this where it lies, and that's on the government's inaction.
Yes, indeed so. It's not wrong to say that we were misled at times. We didn't know what to do. So we were just about trying to follow what was told. And that caused all this trouble. However, I would like to take this up that council leader and MPs have spoken about the light at the end of the tunnel, as I read yesterday, which really sounded, a bit more comforting to us. And Mark Spencer, MP for Sherwood, and the government's chief whip said the good news is the vaccine is coming and we just need to get through this short period over the next 6 to 8 weeks while we roll it out. My question to you is, do you think in the next 6 to 8 weeks, Nottingham will be getting enough vaccination to be safely out of the situation?
I will be putting confidence on the government during our MPs' briefings with ministers to ensure that people in Nottingham and across the country get the vaccine as quickly as possible. I've demanded from ministers what the strategy is for rolling out the vaccine. The good news is, in Nottingham, we've started vaccinating the highest priority groups. So people aged over 80, care home residents and staff, health and care workers at the highest risk. We've currently got 4 vaccination sites in our city, and we've got 2 more opening next week.
Oh, that's very positive then. Yes, that is indeed a positive thing.
Everyone eligible for an appointment will receive a letter about it. Please don't contact the NHS beforehand. If you're eligible, you will receive a letter, and it will take weeks to vaccinate the highest priority groups, but everyone will be notified in due course.
That is really good news. Taking it from there to a bit on the school and exams area. Education Secretary Gavin Williams, he has once again cancelled the GCSEs and the A levels. A few weeks back, he said that this is not going to happen again. But it has happened. And enormous number of students are in distress. They do not have absolute faith on teachers' prediction, because the time they would get and the kind of preparation they were putting forward towards these exams will not count to how they have been exactly performing in school. It cannot be equal. So, you keep brushing yourselves up, and finally, what you produce in your exam is different from when you are in the process of, making yourself ready for the whole thing. It cannot be. And many students, as has been seen in the past, have missed out on their career goals or on their choice of career. I personally know quite a few students who are really upset because of what has happened. They haven't got what they wanted. So this could have definitely happened even after the exams. I do understand, but still, just teacher assessment is not enough, is what most students are saying.
I agree, and we know from evidence. There's been evidence from the Runnymede Trust and other organisations, and anecdotal evidence that I've heard from my friends and family and neighbours, and I'm sure you would have as well, that centre assessed grades disproportionately impacts Black, Asian and minority ethnic children, that you're less likely to get a higher grade if you're from one of our communities. So that's something that the government needs to urgently look at, to make sure that everybody, as far as is at all possible, gets the grades that they deserve and doesn't have doors shut off to them. Because I think it's completely unjust that at 15 or 16, if you're doing your GCSEs, 17, 18, if you're doing your A levels, that you would have doors to your chosen career path shut off to you. I will be holding an online Zoom event for GCSE, BTEC and A-level students in the coming weeks. So I'll make sure that I send that to you, Annu, so that you can help me promote it. And
yes, certainly.
To speak to GCSE and A-level and of course BTEC students. And
we are happy to help you in any manner, any fashion that's possible from our side. We are a community radio, and we do as much as possible from our side for the community. This indeed is going to be a very, helpful kind of did you say a webinar?
Yeah, it's going to be a bit like this one.
Okay. That sounds really good. So you think that students are not going to miss out on their chosen career?
Well, I think if the last year, and in fact the last decade, is anything to go by, we know that we can't trust the government at their word. But what I can promise you is that I will be fighting the corner of every single child, of every person in Nottingham East, as I have been since I was elected last year, to make sure that people have the financial support that they need, to make sure that young people have the opportunities that they need. So some of the things that I've been calling on since the beginning of the pandemic is financial support for self-employed people. We've particularly been working with our taxi drivers, who have been left out of a lot of financial support, for small businesses, for statutory sick pay to be increased so people can actually afford to follow the rules. Because if you have to choose between putting food on the table or going to work even though you're ill, that's a very difficult choice for people to make if they're on a 0 hours contract earning the minimum wage, for a universal credit uplift, and also for an evictions ban and an end to no recourse to public funds. These are all things that I've been contacted about. But I'm looking forward in the coming weeks to hearing from GCSE and A-level students and BTEC students. And I'll be doing the same for university students in my constituency so that I can hear directly what your concerns are and I can take those up directly with ministers.
Okay, that is again another positive note. And yes, hopefully when somebody fights for us, then some good result must come out of it. At least we will get to know what's happening. That indeed was the second thing that I was, next thing that I was going to talk about, that as has been promised by the councillors and MPs, yes, help is coming out, but there is a section of the society, or there are, I should say, many people in small businesses or people like taxi drivers who haven't received enough help and are trying to do a lot of different things to continue with, earning something at least. So you really took it up from me. Thank you. But in the meantime, I did see one of our...
When you look at how much solidarity there has been between the people of Nottingham, it's been really moving and inspiring. The mutual aid groups, food banks like Himma, taxi drivers in our community that have been giving free lifts to health and social care workers, and they need to be looked after in return. And that's what I'm continuously demanding from the government. But I would say if you have a specific concern and a specific issue, please email me and I will see to it as soon as possible.
Okay, so you have heard Nadia say that if you have any specific concerns, you can write straight to her, and the problem will be looked into. Thank you, Nadia. It was wonderful. This is wonderful.
We also hold weekly advice surgeries, which you can book via email. So if you have any problems, please get in touch with me so that I can do everything that I can to help.
Wonderful. In the meantime, I think you saw the pop-up come up from one of our listeners who has asked a question. It is regarding the vaccine, and I think you would like to answer that. He has asked that if you could address the change of doses of the vaccine. It has been moved from 3 weeks to 12 weeks. Now, can you shed any light on that? Why it has been delayed? Yes. Can you see it on the screen?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
This is a very good question. It's one that lots of MPs have been contacted about. I signed a letter alongside about 40 other MPs from different parties, calling on the government to be open and transparent about the scientific advice that they've had. It's important to say that the vaccine is safe, that everybody must take up the vaccine, but it's also important that the government is open about its reasoning. So, as we know, scientific advice and research was for 3 weeks. The government is now talking about 12 weeks. And we need to be able to understand what the government's thinking there is. So the Deputy Chief Medical Officer says that if you have 1 dose of the vaccine, that protects you. It gives you a high level of protection, not as much as if you had 2 doses of the vaccine, but still a high level of protection. So they're saying that it might be sensible to immunise more people and give them a high level of protection, though not quite as high as 2 shots would be, than it would be to immunise fewer people. But if that's the government's reasoning, then we need to know that. So we've put pressure on Matt Hancock to be clear about that to MPs, and we will keep putting pressure on him to respond to that letter, as we have been with government ministers in our briefing calls.
I can see another question being asked from Payal Sood, which was about your view on on the university fees, what should be done about that? Shouldn't that be reduced or something done with that?
Hi, Payal. Absolutely. I think that
Yes,
tuition
should
should
I
be.
read the question? What is Nadia's view of tuition fees of uni students being waived or reduced? That is what Pyle is asking.
I think that tuition fees should be scrapped altogether. I stood on a manifesto that said we should not have tuition fees. Education should be a public good, not a commodity. It should be a right that is available to everyone from the age of 0 right to the end of life. You should be able to access any kind of education at any time. I understand how difficult it is for students now who aren't receiving the education and the classes that they've paid for. I have been advocating on behalf of students for and working closely with student unions as well, particularly on the issue of accommodation, because lots of students are still paying for accommodation that they're not allowed to use. And I believe that the rents should be waived and that they should at the very least be given an option of a no penalty ending of the contracts. And that's something that I've been supporting Nottingham Trent University students in demanding, and also Nottingham University students. I will be holding an online Zoom event for university students in Nottingham East, where I want to hear more about their campaign around reducing tuition fees. And it's something that I will feed back to both our education team on the Labour front bench, but also take up with government ministers who, of course, have the ultimate power.
That's wonderful. I'm left with only 4 minutes, so I have to move to the next topic, that is Brexit. And what is your opinion? I'm not going on particular questions, but okay, we have another question. During pandemic, tuition fee is issue. What support do the government? Okay, fine. I think Nadia has already answered a lot about it. Payal, I'm really sorry, but we have to move on to the Brexit. I think we don't have enough time for that. But again, there has been an extremely mixed reaction about Brexit, the way it closed, whatever is happening from the people of Nottingham. Many have even complained that they do not understand. They thought it was going to be absolute positive, that UK was going to do much better than earlier. But it seems that there are many hurdles to cross now. So what is your opinion about it? Although the government has been saying that in future it's going to be very positive, very good for the people of the country. But at the minute, there are a huge number of hurdles to cross. What is your take on it? How do you think Nottingham should react towards it, or what are people to do, small businesses to do?
Well, 4 minutes to answer the question that we've been trying to answer for the last 4 years.
Three now.
I will give it a crack. So I think it's perfectly reasonable that people are saying, you know, we were told at the time that Brexit would mean better opportunities, that it would mean a more prosperous country and more power and control over our laws. Because at the time, that's what we were told. We were then told at the general election that Boris Johnson had an oven-ready deal. That turned out to be a lie. I voted to remain, not because I'm uncritical of the EU, but because I believe that it was the best outcome for protecting jobs, for migrants' rights, for our planet, our food standards, and also for our NHS. So now I accept that Brexit is happening, but it's my priority to defend the rights of my constituents. And that's why I didn't vote for Boris Johnson's Brexit deal. If we look at free movement as one thing, because I know that this is something that lots of people are concerned about, the end of free movement is going to be a huge loss of opportunity for people in this country. I know that some people believe that limiting European immigration will let the government relax rules on non-EU immigrants. But we haven't seen any indication that that's what the government wants to do. We've seen the opposite. The government already had control over non-EU immigration policy before Brexit. We've seen the way that Priti Patel and Home Secretaries before her have treated migrants and people of colour. And it's vital now that we build solidarity between different communities, because whether someone is from India, like my parents and grandparents, or from Jamaica or Romania or Poland, they face the same enemies. We face the enemies of an emboldened far right, of xenophobia, of nationalism. And it's often the same people who attack Eastern European migrants as it is who attack British-born people of colour, like me and like many of the people listening to this. And we've got to remember that we have more in common with each other than we ever will with the people who want to divide us.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Nadia. We don't have any more time. It's 12:30. I cannot take it any further, but it was an absolute pleasure on my side to have you as my guest. And in these troubled times, what you say, the way you have opened yourself up for help for the students or whoever is in need of some help can write to you. Thanks a lot for that. I do understand that's part of your responsibility, but to still open yourself up to listen to everybody at this time when you have more coming from all areas is a sign of a wonderful person that you are and a wonderful leader that you are. And we have a real good representation from not just Nottingham, but also from a community. You speak so truthfully of how colored people are sometimes not getting the rights that they should. If we think that this is our country, we should get equal rights, indeed. But thank you so very much. It was a pleasure having you. Hope you will oblige me to have another interview with you in sometime in the future, and we will have more positives to talk about. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having me, Annu, and thank you to everyone who's listened as well. And I'd love to come back whenever you want me. I'll come back.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Take care. Bye. Bye, listeners.